Hello everyone, it is Dylan from Yugioh Everything, and welcome back to yet another top 10 list. This time I will be doing my top 10 best characters in Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc 5. This was a fun list to make, and I really hope you guys enjoy, and leave your lists down below. Keep in mind, there are so many characters in Arc 5, so if a certain character does not make my list, it does not mean by any means that I thought they were a bad character. Again, there are just so many characters to select from, so some fan favorites are gonna fall short of the top 10. Anyway, let's get right to it. I hope you guys enjoy. Number 10. Just making this list is a character that might not be on too many lists, and that is Suka Kaga, aka the Ninja Dude. Suka Kaga is introduced to us in pretty awesome fashion by saving Yuzu and Serena with the additional help of his brother Hikage. The reason he makes this list for me can almost be summed up by one word: selflessness. I would argue that he is the most loyal, selfless character in all of Yu-Gi-Oh!, and I absolutely love that trait in people. This is best shown in the duel against the Obelisk Force members in that crazy 6-on-3 duel back in Standard. He continually used his own trap card to negate attacks at his other team members while just continually taking damage himself. This is also shown when he actually loses a duel on purpose at the orders of Akiba Reiji during his duel against Shinji. This was so that he could be sent to the underground facility and work as a messenger due to his incredible evasion skills. Also, did I mention that the guy is a freaking ninja? There was one point where he jumped off his D wheel to grab an action card and landed back on it like nothing happened. Between his abilities and more importantly his loyalty, Suka Kaga was a guy I loved watching. I just couldn't put him higher on this list because we never got any backstory about him, and he just didn't duel all that much, so he just makes this list at the number 10 spot. Number 9. Number 9 belongs to the pioneer of entertainment dueling, and that is Yusho Sakaki. I've said it before, and I will gladly say it again. Yusho is the man that everyone should strive to be. He is just genuinely one of the friendliest people in the entire Yu-Gi-Oh! Universe. If a magician was ever to be a duelist, that magician would be Yusho. We learn at the start of the show that he revolutionized entertainment dueling, and that he is the father of our main protagonist, Yuya. We don't see Yusho in the flesh for over 100 episodes, and we really only see glimpses of his duels, but every time the guy dueled, it was magnificent. The way he was able to troll Dennis in that church-esque building, and then the way he trolled Yuri was so much fun to watch. I wish we just saw more of Yusho's dueling, because in those two instances, I really didn't mind action duels. They were legitimately fun to spectate. What I loved about Yusho moreover than all of that was just how pure of a character he was. Even after Akiba Leo, his former friend, led a genocide in the XZ's dimension, Yusho was still willing to forgive Academia and Akiba Leo. He was just a pure character, he was a truly entertaining duelist, and he was just idolized by so many characters throughout the show. He couldn't not make this list for me. Alas, he only dueled fully once on screen and wasn't introduced until way later in the show, at least in the flesh, so I can't put him any higher for those reasons. Still, despite his short on-screen time, he makes this list for me at the number 9 spot. Number 8. The girl on the thumbnail takes her place at 8, and that is Yuzu's fusion counterpart, Serena. I'll give away a spoiler for the rest of this list, but Serena is in fact my favorite bracelet girl in Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc 5, so yes, that means Yuzu does not make this list for me, along with Ruri and Rin. Yuzu just missed out, but let me explain why Serena is my favorite and made this list for me. I love her independence and fiery personality. That to me is what made her stand out from the other 3 bracelet girls in Arc 5. I also felt there was more dimension with her character than any of the other 3. She originated from Academia and was shown in a flashback that she tried to escape confinement because she wanted to fight in the war against the XZ's dimension. Leo obviously wouldn't let her since she was vital for his plans to revive Rei. She manages to escape accompanied with Barrett and tried to destroy any XZ's duelists in Standard. She carded Hokuto and almost carded Sakuragi until Reiji stopped her. She quickly learned about the horrors of Academia's plans and had a change of heart. This is where her character became on level playing field with Yuzu, whose character also got off to a really great start. However, we then went to the Synchro Dimension, where arguably Serena took over as the lead female. She lost a really enjoyable duel to Yugioh, and then unfortunately was brought back to Academia in episode 92. After that, almost all the bracelet girls became pretty much wasted, and were never used again, not counting the brainwashed gimmick. But here's the thing, Serena was the only bracelet girl who did not have to heavily rely on a U-boy for relevance. Without Yugioh, who really cares about Rin? Without Yuto, Ruri? Heck, even Yuya with Yuzu, even though yes, Yuzu did make more connections actions than Ruri and Rin did, but Yuzu's only line became shouting Yuya for the last 25 episodes of the show. At least when all the Bracelet Girls became so underwhelming, Serena still had that individual pride that made me and a lot of us fall in love with her at the start of the show. At least that's the way I look at it. So Serena does come in 8, which could have been and should have been so much higher on this list had she been written better, but still, 8 is not a bad placement considering she never dueled Not Brainwashed in the last 63 episodes of the show. Number 7. Coming in at 7 is definitely going to be a controversial one, and that is Yuya Sakaki, the main protagonist of Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc 5. This is only the second time the main protagonist is not my favorite character in their respective show, and probably the first time the main protagonist would not make my top 5 for their respective show. Now, first of all, I like Yuya. If he didn't, he wouldn't have made this list. I made a top 5 protagonist video a while back, and I ranked Yuya 3rd. He has dropped for me since, and I said in that video if he continued to go berserk, it would harm his character through my eyes. That was made while Arc 5 was at episode 92, and clearly that is what happened to the highest of degrees. Now, whether you want to say Yuya is partially to blame for Zark or completely innocent is one thing, but the reason Yuya declined in my eyes was not only that, but it was how forced his entertainment dueling started to feel and how dependent he became on action cards. I've already touched on how action cards were a huge annoyance for me, especially later on in the series, and the fact the writers made Yuya so dependent on them and the fact he would always get what he needed just made his character feel stale. Yusho and Dennis were two characters who were great entertainers, and their dueling was not dependent on drawing Evade and Miracle 5 times every duel. More so than that, his ideologies of making people smile started to feel so forced. I know you have good intentions, and that is one thing that I do like about Yuya, but there is a time and place for everything. The duel against Jack? Sure, it needed to be entertaining to bring the Synchro Dimension together. The duel against the Tyler twins after they brutally and almost killed Alan, Sayaka, Gong, and Shingo? No. The entertainment was not necessary and not realistic. You are in an interdimensional war, and you're still trying to make people happy. The same people who have killed so many innocent citizens, it's just not realistic, and those were the duels that the redemption scenes felt so forced, and they just felt out of place. I mean, down the stretch of the show, I rarely rooted for Yuya because his dueling really started to get on my nerves, and the writers, for some reason, pitted him against fan-favorite characters. Gong, Shingo, Suka Kaga, Dennis, Shun, Reiji. They never gave him a chance to defeat a twisted evil villain, which would have really let fans get behind his character, kind of like Zexal did with Yuma and Don Thousand. I mean, how many people actually rooted for Don Thousand in that duel? You know, I was rooting for Yuma. Overall, I still like Yuya a lot, and I know I ranted a bit, but I'm just trying to justify why he isn't higher on this list for me. I talked to like 5 friends, and they actually all said Yuya wouldn't even make their list. So let me know if I have him a bit low, or if you think I have him a bit too high down below. I know putting him in this spot will be the big talking point in the comments. So yeah, anyway, Yuya is 7. Let's tread on. Number 6. Coming in right ahead of Yuya is his fusion counterpart, and that is Yuri. Yuri is the most sinister of the U-Boys, and I really thought he was the breath of fresh air that Arc 5 needed, considering how incompetent Leo Akaba was as a villain. Yuri was maniacal, twisted, ruthless, and was just a treat to watch. The problem was just that, though. It took forever, over 100 episodes to see him duel that didn't get stopped or interrupted. It took over 120 episodes to see him duel one-on-one uninterrupted, which was against Asuka. After this, though, we do get a very heavy dose of Yuri, and it was honestly a pleasure watching him take down Asuka, Sora, Yugo, Kaito, Edo, Yusho. Damn, in a short period of time, his hit list is massive. Ultimately, Yuya takes him down, and the two go on to merge in Reborn Zark. And after that, that's where my issue with Yuri comes in. I didn't mind them waiting so long for him to duel. While I wasn't a huge fan of it, it wasn't a massive complaint or anything like that. But after Zark is defeated, Yuri is on great terms with all the other U-Boys and is treated as if he did nothing wrong at all. He shows no resentment, he now supports Yuya to the fullest, and it honestly just makes no sense. While maybe some people can look past that, I just can't. That really harmed his character for me. Had he had a proper redemption scene or just not been redeemed at all, he would definitely have made my top 10 antagonists, and he probably would have earned a top 2 or 3 spot on this list as well. Still, even with that gripe, I genuinely did enjoy him during the Fusion arc, and he was overall a really cool and vicious character that the show desperately needed. Yuri takes number 6 on this list. Number 5. Just making our top 5 is our first Academia spy on this list, and that is Dennis. Dennis has actually introduced us in the form of saving Yuya during the Miami Championship, which was a really awesome way to make a debut. What was nice about Dennis is it seemed he was almost a professional entertainment duelist, which was something that was lacking at that point in the show. Sure, you had Yuya and even Shingo who were getting to that level, but you could tell Dennis had an immense amount of experience when it came to entertaining people. We quickly learned that he is a spy sent by Academia with the purpose of capturing Yuzu or scouting Yuzu out so Yuri could capture her. The act lasts for a while, but then when we get to the duel between Dennis and Shun in the Synchro Dimension, Dennis is exposed, similar to how Sora got exposed earlier in the show. He then shows his truly vicious side, but comes up short against Kurosaki. We learn that he is the one who almost led the invasion into Heartland, or at least gave the green light when he encountered Rory, Shun's sister. He talks about how it was the worst day of his life, which gives us a small but immediate hint that he doesn't really enjoy doing all of this, and his true purpose is to entertain people. This is best demonstrated during one of Arc 5's darkest moments, where Dennis commits suicide by carding himself after he loses to Kaido. The fact that a character was that complex, to the point where he felt like the only way to stop feeling guilty about everything was to take his own life, is reason enough to make this list, and I think just adds to how great of a character Dennis was overall. He was a complex character that I really enjoyed watching. His entertainment style did not feel as forced as Yuya's did, and he didn't really rely on the use of action cards. He deservedly makes this list for me at the number 5 spot. Number 4. Coming in at number 4 is Sora. Sora was one of the earliest characters we were introduced to and was one of the most intriguing characters to watch in the early stages of the show. I knew right off the bat there was something wrong about him, between his terrifying monsters and getting agitated whenever Hokuto, who was an Xyz user, was mentioned, or when he was watching the duel between him and Yuya. Sora acted like this cute, innocent, friendly kid, but in reality was a spy sent by Academia from the Fusion Dimension. This was exposed during his amazing duel against Shun, where he just completely went off the deep end and showed his true intentions. He later got revenge against Shun and was the first person to actually defeat Shun in a duel. Even though he kind of went MIA for a bit after the standard arc, he made his return to fulfill the mission of recapturing Serena and sends Dennis back to Academia after he loses to Shun. My favorite Sora moment, or one of my favorites, had to be when he saved Suka Kaga and fended off the 3 Obelisk Force soldiers that were about to card him. I thought this was so symbolic of his change of heart, because remember, he killed Suka Kaga's brother only a handful of episodes ago. I know some people feel his change of heart was rushed, but I honestly thought it made enough sense. He built these great friendships with Yuya and Yuzu. He had no friends growing up in Academia, therefore it makes sense that he would join them and stab Academia in the back because they were the only ones who ever cared about him. I don't know, personally, I think Sora was one of the better written Arc 5 characters, and he comes in at the number 4 spot. Number 3. We have now entered the top 3, taking the bronze medal as the XZ's counterpart to Yuya, and that is my favorite U-boy, Yuto. Now, I know a lot of people will probably say, how the hell can you put Yuto this high? The guy was dead for 95% of the show, and while that definitely is a fair counterpoint, and one that I can't really defend, I will give my reasonings on why he is my favorite U-boy, and he does deserve to make this list at this high of a spot. I know a few people feel he didn't have much character development, but I disagree with that. In fact, I think Yuto had one of the most realistic outlooks and backstories of almost any character in the show. He was obviously in Heartland when his hometown was under attack, and we immediately see him with his dual disc out ready to battle the oncoming Academia soldiers. Then he sees Rory, someone who he obviously cares for deeply, crying, talking about how this shouldn't be happening, which puts the prospect of dueling for smiles in Yuto's head. However, he has a much more realistic and human-like outlook on this scenario than Yuya does. While he does believe Yuya and Rory's words, he has an extremely difficult time forgiving anyone who attacked Heartland, the Obelisk Force, the Tyler twins, Edo, etc. And I just always felt like this was so much more relatable and natural than the always make people smile no matter what philosophy. Sure, on one hand, Yuto is fighting this battle within himself where he wants to follow Yuya and Rory's words and make people smile and not duel for revenge. However, on the other hand, he has seen his entire life get destroyed, Rory has been kidnapped, he has no home anymore, so it's completely human to want to instill these beliefs but struggle greatly to do so because of what happened to your life, which leads to a lot of scenarios where Yuya and Yuto go into berserk mode. And yes, Yuto barely interacted with any characters, but besides that, I love his persona, his warm-heartedness, but at the same time, his intensity and his realistic outlook on things. For all of those reasons, I could just relate to Yuto so well. He is my favorite U-boy, and he is my 3rd favorite character in Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc 5. Number 2. Just missing out on the top spot is number 3's best friend, and that is Shun Kurosaki. Should not come as too much of a surprise considering when I live react to episodes, I have a poster of the guy in the background. Even though I'll be the first to admit his character did kind of lose its swagger down the stretch of the show, he is still one of my favorites in Arc 5. In fact, I really believe without him and Yuto, the show would have been so much less enjoyable during the critically acclaimed first 50 episodes. Sure, Yuya and Yuzu were both enjoyable to watch, along with Sora, but Shun is the guy who got the ball rolling on the storyline during that duel against Sora. He brilliantly exposed him in that duel and showed his true colors to everyone watching. Besides his intelligence and being able to pick out Academia members, he was just brutal. Maybe too brutal, honestly, but that's what I loved about him. Even during the duel against Yuya in 144, he still brought that intensity that no other character was able to bring. His Rise Falcon summon against the LDS trio, look it up on here, I think it's on YouTube. You can just hear the intensity and hatred and emotion in his voice, and it's that kind of intensity that just made me fall in love with his character. It kind of simmered down during the later parts of the show, especially during the underwhelming duels against Yuri and Zark, but still, I thought it picked up again to some degree during the Yuya duel at the end of the show. He eventually became softer, which I didn't think was a bad thing. Sure, I loved him because of his lone wolf mentality, minus Yuto, and the intensity he brought to every duel he was involved in, but trusting people and becoming friends or comrades with other characters isn't necessarily a bad thing. I think it might have harmed his character a little bit, but not enough for me to say it ruined his character or anything to that degree, because overall, I would argue that he was the MVP of those first 50 episodes. Moreover, one of the MVPs of the entire show. I just love Shun, and he is the second best character in Arc 5, in my opinion. Number 1. Well, this one has to be a dead giveaway due to process of elimination. The best character in Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc 5 is Reiji Akiba. Reiji is everything you want in a rival character. A fantastic duelist, calm, calculated, intelligent, motivated. He literally is the embodiment of everything I personally look for in a rival. Nothing happens in Arc 5 without Reiji. He was always seemingly one step ahead of everyone, whether it was the Council in Synchro, his own father at Academia, Rajay, Shun, Serena. It didn't matter. He always knew what was going on and what people were going to do. He was able to develop technology that let the Lancers travel through the dimensions. Moreover, he was the one that created the Lancers, and without that, Zark probably destroys everything in this world. The one negative I will say about Reiji is he didn't duel enough. After his second duel with Yuya, he didn't duel again until he defeated Rajay in episode 99. Through the first 130 episodes, he only dueled 3 times. That is it. Which, let's be honest, that is a really, really bad dueling presence. He duels 3 more times in the last 18 episodes, but still, I wish he did have more duels. Besides that one gripe, I thought he was almost a flawless character. There was always that thought that he might turn evil or he might be the mastermind behind the greater picture, but it never happened. It was all conspiracy theories by us fans that never came true. So looking back on that in hindsight, it just makes me like his character more, knowing that he was always being genuine in all the things he did. Between Reiji's intelligence, dueling ability, and the fact that barely anything moves forward without his leadership, he was just a treat to watch and a character that I really will miss dearly going forward. Reiji is the best character in Arc 5, in my opinion, and therefore tops my list. Thank you all so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed my top 10 characters in Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc 5. Remember, this was all opinion, whether you agree or disagree. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you leave your lists down below. We have one last video for Bonanza Week, and that is the top 10 duels of Arc 5, which should be a lot of fun to talk about. I have had a lot of fun this week. I love talking to all of you guys about this, and I hope to hear from you again on this hot topic. Thank you all for watching. Thank you all for the support, and I hope you have an amazing day.